back. Last Monday's release of the guideline for the forthcoming general elections by the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, has raised tension here and there among political actors, apprehensive about what the rules of the game mean for them. Joining us this evening, we have Mr. Rasheed Adegbenro. He is Rasheed Adegbenro. He is Senior Vice President, Center for Values in Leadership. And of course, we also have Mr. Dami Adebayo. He's a Public and Political Affairs Analyst. Good evening, gentlemen. It's good to have you join us.
Hello. Now, shooting our first question, we had 61 political parties rejecting what they described as an obnoxious clauses inserted into the election guidelines. Now, Rasheed, let's have your thought.
Well, the interest shown so far is an indication that we have a lot of missing links in the system. Politics and democracy ordinarily should bring better life and living to society. Mm-hmm. So if there's concern today, it shows something is missing. And we will not fault those who raise issues concerning the guidelines. Mm-hmm. What INEC needed to have done is to have deepened public engagement on the way forward concerning the elections. If this had been done very well, there will have been minor opposition to the guideline we have. Okay. It shows clearly that people expect quite a lot, and from the look of things, the guidelines may not meet their expectations.
Well, we hear that political parties were mostly peeved about INEC's decision to hold on to the use of incident forms, which, you know, is part of the apprehension that they have. This incident forms will be used during the elections. They're saying that this is to allow for continuous voting and accreditation throughout the election day. But some political parties would rather not have that because they're saying this could make way for unnecessary, you know, let's say, manipulation of the electoral process. What do you think?
I agree with Mr. Rasheed that, you know, INEC has sort of left people in the lurch about what is happening as well. And it's interesting that political parties are actually the ones complaining as well. Because we need to consider the fact that if they haven't carried, you know, the political parties along as well, then how much more hope do we have for people as well? Incident forms is usually a very interesting thing as well, because we also forget that, you know, the 15 elections, if we're going to call them decent elections as well, we need to realize that incident forms are probably one of the things that drew a blight on the thing as well. And again, the justification that INEC has given is credible, but again, is it strong enough in the sphere that we're going into? Again, I'm not sure that a lot of Nigerians would agree as well. I personally think that it's a bit weak and it's coming way too late as well.
Okay. Now, some have also rejected the creation or usage of some secret polling units as well. What do you make of that as well?
Well, it's part of the engagement process that I said is lacking. Polling units should be communicated to parties well ahead of the election in identified locations with free access by all stakeholders. Well, if there's a deviation from that norm, then there'll be a challenge to the outcome of such an election.
Talking about what you started with, the issue that there was not any form of, you know, interaction between the parties, and they made a comparison of sorts. They said that the Jega-led INEC sought the input of parties on issues such as this, as compared to this INEC. In fact, a group of them have vowed to take INEC to court on this particular matter, and we just have 25 days before, you know, the elections. Why the whole fuss? Why couldn't INEC do everything they're doing by the books? Why are we here?
I think the general society, including all stakeholders, particularly social enterprise organizations and civil society, have a blame to take on this. All of us in the electoral process are supposed to be umpires. Many of us should have drawn attention to this in the past. When the electoral law was being reformed, there was a public hearing in the National Assembly. I mean, we didn't have enough representation of stakeholders in terms of social or civil society organizations. This is a lesson we should learn, that we are all stakeholders in this project in Nigeria, and at the right time, we should have made adequate input. If we had done that, it should not be left at this last minute that changes are coming. Any major overhaul now will lead to destruction of the elections.
But do you also expect, because one of the issues that they've raised is that, well, we must be kept abreast as to the number of PVCs that have been collected. As of now, don't you expect to see INEC reeling out the statistics and figures state by state, if it is on a weekly basis at least, doing a countdown to 10 days to the election? Your thoughts, Dami?
I mean, INEC voter engagement has been, abysmal, really. I mean, you could sort of justify it by the fact that the agency is really underfunded as well, and the fact that really there hasn't been a budget passed as well for them to actionalize a lot of the things that they want to do as well. But again, INEC engagement with the public has been poor.
Well, this isn't the first time we're conducting general elections, and we have a history. We should have learned lessons. This is not a litmus test. It's a grander scale than that of Osun-Ekiti elections.
Ironically, I think we're starting to expect more from INEC because we've seen that they can actually pull their weight when they want to as well. So we've seen the 15 elections that we've gone like, we can only go, that should be the minimum standard. And that's great. It's great that we expect a lot from INEC as well. Now, is INEC going to rise to that standard, and do the constraints around it allow it to rise to that standard? It's probably a different debate as well. But again, INEC should be doing a lot more. I mean, even the registration process as well was fraught with a lot of, complaints, with people actually having to push INEC as well. The fact that INEC listened to a certain degree is probably progress as well. But I believe we can push INEC even further.
There are allegations in some quarters that the reason why INEC is underfunded and why there's a last-minute rush onto as to handling the whole process is deliberate. They're saying it's deliberate from, the top, because INEC is not as independent as it would want to be, and that's also somewhat of a start of the manipulation of the process. Do you agree?
I don't like to live on rumors, so I will shoot that down immediately. Like I said, a lot of stakeholders should take responsibility for some of the lapses we have today. Our own organization, CVL, we went on roadshow in Lagos. We did a walk from Victoria Land to Obalende, simply to sensitize the public on the need to register for the election and make sure to obtain their PVC. We challenge other stakeholders, particularly civil society organizations, to do the same across the country. We took our campaign to Abuja, we visited INEC, we visited the National Orientation Agency, we visited quite a lot of stakeholders on the government side, on the high public expectation of their role and output concerning 2019 elections, that we cannot afford to get this one wrong at this time. This is the role that we expect a lot of people to play in order to put INEC on its toes. We did speak directly to INEC. You cannot afford to bungle this election.
And talking about...
They gave their commitment, and where we raise concerns, they have some explanations to make. For example, why do we usually have delay in announcing the results? Why can't this be transmitted electronically to your base station and is made public? But said the electoral law still stipulates that it has to be done manually. Any decision contrary to that legal provision is a contravention of the electoral process. That we all should have been at the National Assembly to have made the call. It's some passionate appeal for electoral law to have been amended to allow electronic platform transmission. We didn't do that.
But that
so
would
we are
have
still
gotten presidential assent, and if the president decides, well, I'm not appending the signature to that, then it still remains a bill.
Our society will have made our move and our positions known. And the weighty voice behind that position will have probably influenced the president.
So you think we didn't push enough to get that bill signed?
I think we didn't push enough. And from my experience on the field, when we were doing sensitization, we discovered that political parties too were lacking in really sensitizing and educating their members on what the electoral process should be. How should the party elections, primaries, should be conducted. This was very lacking. It was coming damn too late. Many of the parties had their conventions and primaries only in September, October. 3-4 months to the election, which is totally inadequate to allow the public to scrutinize the list that presented to us to vote for.
It takes me back to a question that we threw at someone some weeks ago about INEC's preparedness. And of course, on the part of the political parties, there are people who political parties, especially the new political parties, are fielding that to some voters are a great choice. But now, because these voters are used to either the umbrella or a broom, they might not necessarily know, because you have no pictures of these people on that ballot paper. And so it might just be an issue of voting for the familiar as opposed to voting for whom you actually intended to vote for. And this is also a lapse on the part of these political parties, whether big or small.
The public education was very low.
I don't even like the design of ballot papers as well. It's, you know, I don't have very big fingers, but again, it's very hard to stick your fingers in the ballot box as well. And sometimes when you see the margin between, you know, cancelled ballots and, you know, actual ballot, you could tell that this is where this person was voting as well. But sometimes you have, you know, either a petty, you know, polling unit officer who just goes like, look, you know, this doesn't count it. And the fact that, you know, I'm not going to argue over one vote when there's a lot of people in the sun as well. But going back to it as well, unfortunately, if anyone was well poised to do electoral reform, it would be the government of the day as well, especially with the flag bearer who feels like he's been cheated. 2003, who felt that he'd been cheated in 2007 as well. So if there was anyone that should have done this as well, it should have been them. Ironically as well, with the National Assembly, it's very funny that they haven't focused on this as well. And I would think that, you know, if you're going to argue with the president, or if you're going to say that you wanted an electoral bill, you know, to be signed as well, make sure you have the numbers for a veto as well. So if you don't have those numbers, then again, put up really.
So we've not all been able to push with one voice to have a stronger commitment and say, well, we want this and we have to have this under democratic process, really. Now, Mr. Adegbenro, I would like to also have your reaction because there are a whole lot of bottlenecks having to get your PVCs and a whole lot more. But the use of youth corps members as ad hoc staff has also raised a whole lot of concerns. If we are calling that, well, we don't want the use of youth corps members as members of the INEC team, don't you think that's going to just add unnecessary pressure on the personnel that's supposed to monitor, supervise, and coordinate this election?
Yes, you're very right.
But in your discussion with INEC team, did you raise that?
No, the issue of youth corps serving as ad hoc did not come up. What INEC was emphatic upon was adequate education be given to all volunteers and observers that will support the election process. And you want to ask yourself, who presents the most credible, the most fair picture today? Are they youth corps who are not from their primary states, most often? Are you going to rely on just free flow of people who could be politically biased? So I think INEC use of NYSC people is not a bad idea. The other would have been to use the national security, social, civil defense organization, but most often those are usually domiciled within their area of of either state or tribe, and that could throw up a lot of questions. Using youth corps may not necessarily be a bad idea. What is important is proper education on their roles and their rights. If the roles are well specified, I think they are knowledgeable enough to comply.
Dami, and we also see that we are going to have a novelty. We are going to have polling units that are specially designed for people with some level of impairment or disability. Do you think we are also supposed to pay as much of a concern and have fears that, well, maybe this is just a rigging machinery, or there are going to be manipulations here and there?
Scrutiny
because
these people who show up as
some people are not impressed.
With some form of impairment.
To have more inclusion, but it has also met sharp criticism as well.
I mean, again, I think there's much ado about nothing, but again, it's a credibility issue as well. If you don't trust, you know, whoever is your umpire, you're going to shout foul at every call that they make as well. But for me, I think it's a great issue. I think our voter turnout is way too low for us not to encourage as many people that want to vote as well. So if you want to vote, if you can vote, then please, by all means, go out and vote.
So you're optimistic that, well, this is for more political inclusion instead of
I'm up for it.
being viewed as a means to manipulate.
Again, what's the worst that would happen? You know, you roll in your wheelchair and you have more than how many fingers as well to put. I really, you know, I'm a lot more, you know, I probably like to believe that, you know, there's probably some good going on and we actually need to get more people to vote.
Okay,
what's happening.
One more question for you, Mr. Adegbenro. There are also concerns of the accreditation, you know, procedure, which allows fake voters whose names are not on the register, those with fake PVCs to also vote because of, you know, INEC's guidelines. What should people be thinking about in that direction? Because whether we like it or not.
Well,
This
you
might.
use the word fake. Fake is illegal, so it has no place in the electoral process. If what you're holding is a fake document, it's just like having a fake driving license.
So a fake passport.
Or a fake passport. You'll not be allowed out of the airport. So if the document you are holding as a voter is fake, not only should you be barred from voting, you should be apprehended and prosecuted. I think, just to follow what Dami had said, we need more platforms to provide speaking engagement. Even 5-10 days to the election, there's still need for very deep public education and information. Our organization is providing one in that direction on 10 days to the election. We're having a major event at the Museum Center, which is attendance is free on condition that you register online. Is to allow people to speak out their mind. What is as democracy really brought benefit to us? Why this energy and this very huge commitment of resources to an election that 4 years after you end up counting as a loss?
Yes.
So I think we need more public platforms, and CVL is providing that on 6th of February.
I'd like to have a yes or no answer now. Do you think that we're going to have the retention of the 2011-2015 accreditation time and then voting time this time?
I think it's too soon to say. I don't know. I feel like it'd be unfair to cast
It's a yes or no
aspersions on that.
question.
It's a yes or no.
I'll decline. I'm sorry.
No.
Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, Rasheed Adegbenro, and he's a Senior Vice President, Center for Values in Leadership, as well as Dami Adebayo, my namesake, a political affairs analyst. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your time, and we'll be talking some more hard talk when we come back in just a moment.
Yes, stay tuned. You don't want to miss this.